Hello and welcome to another lecture of Creative Nonfiction. This lecture is about our previous work that we were discussing with the title This Boy's Life. Today we are going to discuss its summary, its narrative arc and section by section understanding of this memoir. In this lecture, we turn from authorial background to thematic foundations of a closer examination of this boy's life as a narrative. Since memoirs are not simply the stories, but they are the constructive realities and stories drawn out of memory. So it is necessary to understand how Tobias Wolff organizes this book, how the story progresses, and why it moves in this way, and why its structure reveals so much about the memoir genre itself. This Boy's Life offers an intrusive model for students of creative nonfiction because Wolff's method resembles an almost novelistic unfolding. He arranges memoir in scenes not as a chronological long-form history, but as a series of vivid episodes that accumulate into emotional truths. Well, to begin with, the memoir opens with Toby and his mother Rosemary on the road. From the first pages, the tone is set with a sense of escape, restlessness, and hope tinged with fear. This beginning functions symbolically as well as narratively. For creative nonfiction writers, it is an example of how to open a memoir with motion, which is a movement and that creates narrative propulsion, and memoirists often use this technique to begin with a moment of transition because transitions bring reflective tensions to life. Tobias is fleeing one life with the hope of finding a better one, and the opening scenes show the reader how a child builds fantasy as a protection. Toby dreams of wealth, of protection, and so he builds a concept of strength and heroism and tries to find out new identities and even considers changing his name. The sheer intensity of these early desires sets the foundation of the memoir's emotional architecture. The next major moment in the book forms around the arrival of Uta, and in that section, and then into those series, we come to know of the encounters that are made with small towns culminating in Chinook and concrete Washington. These early sections do more than describing and relocation. They dramatize the instability of a life with a single mother, a woman who longs for stability but repeatedly finds herself dependent on unreliable or predatory men. Wolff is careful not to portray Rosemary simplistically. She is loving and gentle, yet flawed, naive, and sometimes weak in the face of manipulation. Students of creative nonfiction should notice how he balances compassion and critique. A memoirist may love the people they write about, but they must portray them honestly. That balance is one of the memoir's key lessons, section by section. The memoir unfolds with an escalating sense of danger. Toby's encounter with delinquent boys, the school system, and his own increasingly reckless behavior builds a layered portrait of adolescence. Scenes such as Toby stealing cards, forging report cards, and fantasizing about violence demonstrates the memoir's unfiltered truthfulness. Wolff does not glamorize or justify these actions. Instead, he allows them to stand as evidence of a boy desperate to assert control in a world where he feels powerless. In class discussions, this part of memoir prompts valuable reflection. How far can a memoir writer go in exposing their own faults? Wolff shows that the strength of memoir comes from revelation rather than self-protection. One of the memoir's most compelling sections involves the introduction of Dwight, the man who will become Toby's stepfather. Dwight is one of the most vividly rendered characters in a modern nonfiction, a manipulative, petty, violent man whose cruelty is both psychological and physical. The memoir enters a new emotional register once Toby moves in with Dwight in concrete. The scenes in Dwight's home, chopping of words, humiliation, sudden outbursts of anger, all these show him as someone who is not interested in making him a better person or making him understand his psychology. So basically, as the memoir progresses, his inner life intensifies. He develops fantasies of escaping from the reality that he is stuck into. He desires for excellence and transformation, and in all of these circumstances, he goes for finding some way which is obviously not right, and he gets entangled into those wrong things, including the forged identities, fabrication of forged documents. Basically, he wants a good life. And in pursuit of that good life, that better life, as the writer has uses the term, he develops certain strategies and goes for making some decisions that are socially not acceptable, but they are those natural reactions that a person of such kind may have. And because of these actions, the memoir writer has presented him as a character who had identified all of these things into his life and how all of these happenings of his life had changed him thoroughly. So the memoir appears as a writing that truly depicts those flaws that are basically here into our life, as not as imagination, not as ideal characters, not as someone who is so full of vices. They are the realities, they are the things that lie into human nature. So all of his life is depicted into a way where we can find ourselves, if not into all of the sections, definitely into some part of his life. We may find certain voices and good things that are there reflecting our reality of being a human and of being someone who is exposed to such dangerous environment where fabrication of lie is sometimes essential for survival. The narrator reflects on the boy who he was. He does not overpower that boy with adult judgments. He just simply develops a reality, and that reality becomes the topic of interest for life. And that interest in life demonstrates how memoir can be built from fragments, and how ordinary events can be charged with symbolic meanings, and how personal narrative can reflect larger themes of class, masculinity, ambition, abuse, and even identity as well. Because basically, what he was doing was in the pursuit of finding a reality and identity, because it was something that was missing into his life. He develops a connection with the society in his own way. There was no one who could guide his ways or who could monitor his actions. He was doing and learning all of the things on his own, and that's why all of these things were being a problem for him, and he was unable to find what was right and what was wrong. Obviously, he felt a sense of understanding into his reality and into his creations, but what he was lacking was the protection that he could have from his own home, from a better financial background, and most importantly, from his parents. The point that his mother is a single mother is the one which makes his reality and his life miserable to this extent that he is unable to get the shelter and protection which is expected by a child of such age from his parents. This thing which was lacking into his life was the point that made him come into the complexes that made his life further more complex psychologically and even physically as well. Because when he moved to concrete in Washington, the life took a dramatic change, but unfortunately what he was desiring was not based onto those patterns. It was rather his own personal vision of a better life which he wanted, and in wanting that a reality of that better version of life, he was just going through all of the activities that can be judged by wisdom, manipulative, or good people of society as some ones which are not based on to good things. In the next lecture, we will look at additional interpretive elements, its film adaptation, and how this memoir continues to influence literary fiction in literary non-fiction in a better way. I hope it is understandable for you. Thank you so much.